Network. This is the Flex Network. Flex on them. Flex on everybody. This right here is the Flex Network. Yeah. Flex.
Oh, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Flex Network. I'm your host, as always, Flex Shane. Follow me on Twitter at the Flex Network 1. I'm joined by the inevitable Alan Seslowski, because if you don't follow his advice, you will go 500 in your fantasy leagues. Alan, what's going on, brother?
Who made that song? The Flex Network intro song, like
that would be Mr. Matthew Beck.
Yeah, I mean,
Flex
like he does music production.
Look, Matt does a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
I don't really know ever what he does, but I know he does a lot of everything.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the key now, having original music, because if you're going to broadcast on YouTube, I mean, you know, the algorithms will get you if you're using other people's music. So I gets me in the mood, to flex.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Like when Matt was trying to court me over a year ago at this point to come into the pod, one of the things that he showed me was the song. He's like, this is legit. I'm like, holy shit. Like, this guy knows what he's talking about. Because I got jacked up. Like, I get excited. I still do a year later. So, I love it. I absolutely love that intro song. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's iconic in our world.
Absolutely. Hey, one day, Al. One day.
So,
soon. Brother, we had our home league. It's kind of a home league, I guess, but our Dynasty Rookie Draft. Myself, you're in it. The Geek from DSF Army's in it. Our boy Flex Matt, and then a bunch of our other friends and family in the Dynasty community. So overall, I think it was pretty fun. It was my last one. It was 3 of 3 for me. I don't know. You joined about 50 new Dynasty leagues this year. So do you have a lot left, or is that it for you?
No. Just getting started, and currently, like, because I have such a draft addiction, I'm going to Dynasty Best Ball now. So, obviously that takes a lot of the headache out of it. You draft your Dynasty League. It is Best Ball format. And a lot of these leagues, you can't even trade until week 5. So, no, I am not done yet.
You know what? I was thinking about starting up another Dynasty League. And the Best Ball really seems to... I love that idea, because you're right. I mean, it just gets to a point where once you have your Dynasty Leagues and you got your in-season leagues, there's just so much to manage every single week with waivers. It's just too much. Whereas with Best Ball, hey man, you don't even have to set your lineup. It's the best players available. And actually, what's interesting? So we're going to give a little bit of a teaser. Next week, an episode that we're going to do is just the different types of fantasy games that you may not be as familiar with. I'm assuming if you're listening or watching this podcast, this video, that you're probably a bit of a degenerate, just like the both of us are.
I take umbrage with that term. I'd say an enthusiast, not a degenerate.
Enthusiast. Well, how about a Dynasty dirt ball, or just a dirt ball in general?
Well, in general, and that's outside of Dynasty.
That's true. There you go. But we want to we're going to have a discussion a little bit more in depth about the different types of formats, different types of games that you can play, and dive into it a little bit deeper. But that's for another topic for another day. But yeah, okay. So you're midway through it. This was my last one. Overall, I'd say that the draft went pretty well. Pretty sharp draft room. Our rookie draft.
Throw the board up. Want to throw the board up so that people can see what you're talking about, or you're not ready for that?
Yeah, let's giddy up. Let's share the screen.
Well, so I mean, let's face it. Anyone that's doing a rookie draft this early is going to be, highly interested in Dynasty, and they're going to be sharp. There's no sleepers anymore. Everyone has access to the same information. Everyone has access to tape. So beating a room like this is going to be impossible. It's you're going to have to reach in order and take some swings at the fence and not play it safe. When you play it safe, you end up 7-6 in your Dynasty League. You go out of the playoffs in the first round. When you swing for the fences, either you end up as a finalist or you bottom out and you get another early first round pick. I mean, that's how I like to play it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I mean, everybody's pretty sharp. I think I was swearing often in this draft as players were getting taken. I was listening to another podcast and they were saying the word snipe doesn't exist. If a guy is going at ADP and he gets picked, that's not a snipe. That's just a guy going at ADP. But it doesn't mean you can't swear.
Which
it was the Roto Underworld podcast.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that. You know me, I don't, I don't have too much experience with that podcast. But it sounds great from what you guys describe. And yeah, no, I agree. When someone's like sniped, I'm like, no, dude, like he was the next guy on the list.
Yeah, I mean, and the point was, if you had like a third round guy targeting at like the 2.2, and he went at the 2.1 right above you, okay, that might be considered a snipe. But if he's going at ADP, it kind of is what it is. But okay, so I'm just gonna go through it. Honestly, this kills me to say it. So hopefully Flex Matt's not listening to this.
Hopefully
Flex Matt. No, I don't like to stroke his ego. He's confident enough. I don't need to stroke his ego anymore.
Okay.
But it's okay. Matt, if you're listening, earmuffs, okay? But I have to say he nailed this draft. But then again, he had a lot of picks, and he made sure that this was going to be the year to replenish his roster. Yeah. And okay, Al, maybe you need to put your earmuffs on, but I think you absolutely nailed this draft as well. Thanks, you absolutely crushed it. So overall, you had quite a few picks. But we're not going to go through your individual pick. This is what I want to do, okay? So I want to go through, just quickly, we don't need to go through every single pick, but I want to go through the first round because this was a super flex tight end premium, of course, is the only way to play. And I want to go through and talk about some of these quarterbacks, where the quarterbacks fell, as well as just overall your impression of how the first round went. Then I want to talk to you a little bit about steal of the draft, some of your favorite picks, some of the picks you were like, what the heck was that? And just kind of roll with it initially. So let's start it off by saying Flex Matt had the first pick, the second pick, and the third pick in this draft because he traded his team. He wanted to go young. He traded a lot of experienced players to get the rookie picks, and he went Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Burrow in that order. First and foremost, surprised at all?
Yeah, I mean, now let's take out that it's the same player that drafted all three.
Yeah,
but in a dynasty draft with Superflex, it doesn't matter if I'm okay at quarterback. I'm still going to take Joe Burrow at 1.1. A rookie quarterback that's picked number 1 overall. That's a highly touted prospect. I mean, they just have a longer shelf life and they score more points. And in a Superflex, they're going to be tradable if you want to get out from underneath it. It's just simple as that. I mean, I understand people, as more and more redraft people are playing Dynasty, they want to win now because that's the redraft mentality, win now. And that's certainly what running backs are, is win now. But I just don't think it's optimal. Now, again, let's take out that the same Dynasty player got all three of those guys.
Yep,
but I just think that it's not optimal to not take Joe Burrow at 1.1. It doesn't mean I'm correct. It just means that the way I'm seeing it is that a long-term asset that's almost guaranteed to produce, whereas the other guys obviously are shorter shelf life and are not guaranteed to produce.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always going to be question marks in terms of, okay, everybody can get injured, right? But, to your point, the running back position is going to be that initial jolt to your system, right? It's most of these guys, especially at the high end picks, are probably going to make an immediate impact to your fantasy team. Whereas
I'm not even sure that's true, though. I'm not sure that's true. Like, stop there. Like, okay. You think who's going to have more fantasy points in week 1 through 4? Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Damian Williams?
That's a good point. I mean, probably I would still probably bet on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but it's probably going to be pretty close, and they're probably going to eat into each other.
Right,
it's going to be like 12, 13 points.
You'd bet me $5. You wouldn't bet me $1,000 because
exactly.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Let's put it this way. If Damian Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire were both the same price, mid-price running backs in week 1, I'm probably playing Damian Williams in my DFS lineups.
Now let's do the same exercise for Jonathan Taylor. Weeks 1 through 4, who's going to have more fantasy points? Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines combined, or Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, there's still the question mark. Is Nyheim Hines even going to be phased out of the offense? It's hard to say, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who, prior to drafting Jonathan Taylor, were like wheels up for Nyheim Hines this year with Phillip Rivers, right? Is that just going to change?
Yeah. And I know it's Dynasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's Dynasty, but it's just again, and both CEH and Jonathan Taylor, obviously they're going to be good players. They project to be good players, and you're going to be really happy you have them. I'm just saying, when you're talking about the first overall pick in a super flex league where you need to start 2 quarterbacks, and as we see now, I mean, the quarterback market's not as deep as everyone thinks it is, especially in Superflex. These guys are impossible to acquire. I mean, I made a trade the year before last where I gave up Aaron Jones to acquire the Tennessee quarterback. At the time, it was Marcus Mariota, which obviously completely failed and was a bad trade. But that's the point, is that's the price of these guys.
Well, and that's what it basically is, right? I mean, you start 2 running backs, you start conceivably 2 quarterbacks,
right,
and there's a top 24. And then, yes, you could say the replacement value quarterback is there. But when you're getting down to that quarterback 26, 27, 28, it gets dicey, man. I mean, don't look no further than my team I've got Cam Newton and Mitchell Trubisky. And it's like, oh my God, it gets, heartburn just looking at what I'm going to do and pray that Cam ends up on a team as a starter due to an injury or something like that. Like,
at least, I think it's a safe bet that Trubisky will start week 1. They're just too invested. I'm not, by week 2 or 3, he could be out, but I just think with no preseason and no offseason activity and no training camp, like, he's going to start. So you'll be okay there. But getting back to
it's an example, right? It's an example of there's no sure thing at those lower,
right,
QB 3s range.
Hey,
and so taking a guy like Joe Burrow, who's probably going to be a locked and loaded, top 15, you could argue, like, week 1.
Let me put it to you another way, Shane. And I think there's even danger when you get into the QB 10, QB 11 range. And I'm talking about like inside the top 12, like Daniel Jones, who you and I both love. But let's say he has a bad year this year. The Giants are going to be in the quarterback market in 2021. I could assure you that Joe Burrow, Tua, and Justin Herbert are all going to be starting in 2021. Okay, Daniel Jones, even Baker Mayfield, who's inside the top 10. If he bottoms out this year, not a lock. I mean, look what the Browns did. They brought in Case Keenum, who's very capable of running an offense, just in case Baker Mayfield bottoms out. So I just think there's so much value in those young rookie QBs in Superflex drafts at the top of your draft.
I think so. I mean, really what it boils down to is if I had the opportunity, I probably wouldn't have gone Joe Burrow 1. I mean, I would have probably gone Jonathan Taylor or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But then again, I'm kind of enamored by those running backs, but I absolutely understand your point. And yeah, exactly. Okay, so point taken. You actually traded out of the third pick.
Yeah,
and you got I can't remember exactly what the trade was, but I know
the trade was moving from. So I had 3, and I was going to take a QB there, but I actually have Tua a little above Burrow, and I knew that he wanted Burrow, so he offered me to move back to the 6th spot, right? And then in addition, for the tax from moving from 3 to 6, he gave me pick 14 overall, 2.2,
which was pretty legit.
Yeah, and I knew I would get Tua there, which I ended up getting. For those viewing, can see on the board, because Dobbins and Akers went the next 2 picks. And I said to myself there, even if I didn't get Tua, that I would be happy to take Swift or Akers, whoever fell at that point.
Well, and then did you trade up, or did you already have that 1.7?
1.7 I had I'd gotten in again, without boring people of the individual of my specific situation. I owned 1.7 in this draft in a trade I did earlier in the day where so I had that safety. And then, so I owned 1.6 and 1.7 now, which obviously was going to be, I was going to get 2 of my 3 players and then use that 2.2 to trade up and get 1.9 also. So that I was able to.
Well, okay, let's just go through it. Okay, so it went obviously CEH, Taylor, Burrow. Then it went J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, and then you took Tua.
At 6.
I think that's a great. Yeah, at 6, that's correct. And then you took DeAndre Swift at 7, Jerry Jeudy went at 8, and then you took CD Lamb at 9, which that's pretty sick, right? I mean, you can argue DeAndre Swift could be the RB1 in this class. Tua could be the QB1 in this class, and CeeDee Lamb could be the wide receiver 1 in this class. So, I mean, upside to the moon.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think there's a perception here that DeAndre Swift landed in a bad situation. Like I hear, and I know you hear this too, like the Cam Akers versus DeAndre Swift debate. The common narrative is that Cam Akers landed in a good situation, DeAndre Swift landed in a bad situation. I see it the complete opposite. I think that DeAndre Swift was taken as basically as a 4 picks after Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a very high pick in the 2nd round. I mean, he's going to play football. And the Detroit Lions, before Matt Stafford went down, they were they were rolling, man. That offense looked good, and now he's back, presumably. DeAndre Swift was my personal RB1 in this class. I didn't see any reason to move him off that other than, the two that won at the top were in good situations. But having Cam Akers move ahead of him, I understand why people are doing it. I just don't agree with it.
Well, here's the debate, right? Here's the debate. Okay, so Clyde Edwards-Helaire, pretty much a nut situation. Jonathan Taylor going into a team that it seems like they're going to transition more to a running-based team, and you assume the talent's going to rise. J.K. Dobbins going to Baltimore. I mean, Lamar Jackson, he's the tide rides all boats, right? Raises all boats. I butchered that, but you know what I'm saying. Okay.
Rising tide, what does it say? You say the rising tide raises all boats, right? Lifts all boats.
Yeah,
there you go.
Lifts all boats, exactly.
Can I ask you what you just said though about Cam Akers? Why? See, because I hear this all the time. Why? Explain to me, because again, I'm not contradicting you. Why is it perceived that he's in a good situation? See, I see him as in not a good situation.
The reason I think that he's in a good situation is because we've seen what the LA Rams want to do when they have a solid team, right? When they've got a solid running game. Jared Goff is not, I mean, he's a middling quarterback, right? He's a decent quarterback. He's not the best. He's not the worst, but we can see that he can get a team to the championship game. Obviously the Rams in general as a team as a whole has definitely downgraded over the last number of years, but to me, a Sean McVay offense is a team that likes to run the ball 50 and they like to use a workhorse. Look, Todd Gurley last year was not the same Todd Gurley, and a big part of that was because he didn't have the usage. Cam Akers comes into a situation where I think that you're going to want to use him. Get out of here with Darrell Henderson. Cam Akers is going to be the RB1 in that situation. And people are so quick to forget these types of offenses. And Mike Yeager in our chat, we're
reading you, Mike. He's goofing on Matt. He's goofing on me. This guy, man, he's like the Don Rickles of the comment section. I love him.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. No, we're gonna get to some of your comments here, Mike. We just need to finish.
They're good comments too.
Yeah, absolutely. But
you stepped up your comment game, Yeager.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I mean, the reason that Cam Akers I don't think was as highly sought after as a prospect was simply because of the situation that he was in. He's going into a situation in LA where, look, Sean McVay, he used to be like the young and up and coming coach, right? He was the guy that you wanted fantasy players on his team. I would argue that's maybe more like a Shanahan offense now. People want, players and pieces of that San Francisco offense, but that used to be the Rams just 2 years ago. What's to say in Dynasty that one, I think he's going to get the opportunity and the touches this year immediately because there's just really nobody ahead of him on that depth chart. And then second, things can change quickly. They can turn this team around in a year or two. We've seen it done year after year where teams go from a middling team to be a top offense. So I just think the opportunity there for Cam Akers is just a little bit more enticing, and really just those four guys above DeAndre Swift. From a talent perspective, I mean, of course, DeAndre Swift, you could argue, was the RB1 without question in this draft class, but you have to put in opportunity. And look, the bottom line is I don't trust the Detroit Lions. I know that you can use that argument against me. Things could change in LA. Well, guess what? Things could change in Detroit if Matt Patricia gets fired. I get it, but I like Cam Akers as a prospect. He was one of my top 4 prospects. I had him actually above J.K. Dobbins for a good part of the draft process. And, at worst, I think they're a bit of a coin flip in terms of who I'd rather have in a vacuum.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that the common narrative, and you're echoing it, and it doesn't mean it's wrong, is that Cam Akers is automatically the starter because look at the team did. They didn't play Darrell Henderson last year. They moved up to get him. They just didn't play him. But sure, that's one scenario. The other scenario is they just don't like rookies. And that, hey, now it's Darrell Henderson's time, and Cam Akers is going to sit behind him. The depth chart, if you go to the depth chart, it has Henderson 1. I know the offseason depth charts mean as much as as 0. They mean 0, but that's another possibility that Akers is not the lead back. I think it's a clear situation that in Detroit that DeAndre Swift and Kerryon Johnson, when healthy, are both going to be about. I think Johnson's going to be a 12 to 16 touch player, and Swift is going to be a 15 to 19 touch player. Both players thrive in that with that workload, and they produce that another back of let's say less ability would have with 23 touches. So I see them in an ideal situation, the Detroit running backs, where, as again, I'm not saying it can't happen and Cam Akers
Yep.
can't come in and take over, but I think that people are just ignoring the possibility that Cam Akers is going to get the rookie treatment, which means less playing time, have to earn it on the field. There's no offseason. I'd be real worried about Cam Akers, especially at the price he's going at. But hey, listen, I'm just not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that no one's exploring that possibility.
Look, it's fantasy football, man. Crazy things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
There are going to be busts. Like, just look at every year. Players that we are super high on, they bust. It's going to happen. The question is who. We try to play the odds by picking some of these higher prospect talents, but I mean, look no further than a guy like Darius Geis, where injuries happen and it can plague you through the first couple of seasons of your career. So, we don't wish that upon anybody. And then obviously there's more situational, but it's tough. We go back and forth and we're nitpicking because that's what we like to do. But at the end of the day, all 5 of these guys are pretty legit prospects, and I would be happy with any 5 of these guys on my team.
What about the next tier of running backs?
Well, Mr. Mike Yeager, he, after your CeeDee Lamb pick, went with Keyshawn Vaughn at the 1.10. And I like that pick. I mean, that I was generally higher on Keyshawn Vaughn. I had him probably right around the 8-9 spot. I mean, that's where I thought it was a discussion, at least, in a non-Superflex league. And, I think he went at value here. And I think, look, when we talk about tiers of running backs, I feel like, you could argue those top 5 are, in a similar tier together. And then there's definitely a bit of a drop with Keyshawn Vaughn. Like Ronald Jones, he's not just going to disappear because, to your point, there's experience. Teams are probably going to lean on the on the experienced veterans before they go to these rookies. But at the same time, one of the things that I like about Keyshawn Vaughn the best is that he is good at pass pro, which means that if he's on the field, you would assume that Tom Brady is not going to get absolutely destroyed. And that's really important. So if you can be on the field in all types of situations, then it bodes well for these types of players. So I like Keyshawn Vaughn. I feel like he was kind of in a tier by himself as like the next tier of running backs. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes that dynasty players do is foregoing elite wide receiver prospects to chase bad RB2s, and I think that's what happened here. So, and it's not any slight on specific that in our draft that happened, because it's happening in a lot of drafts, and it's like Keyshawn Vaughn, he's a little bit of an older running back prospect. I mean, he's 23, going to be 20, right, going to be 24 when the season starts, but that is the total hashtag 2 to 3 year window type of player. Like I Philip Lindsay, like those guys that are going to be around for 3 years. Certainly, that second contracts are going to be hard to come by. So my dynasty philosophy, my strategy is to lock in some of the young elite wide receiver prospects, which usually aren't available at pick 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Usually after pick 6 or 7, those guys are they go down to the next tier. This is a very unique draft where there's elite prospects available in these drafts. And that is just how I play dynasty, which is favor the wide young receivers versus the chasing bad RB2, Zach Moss, and those guys have a place in the draft, but it's not in the first round, in my judgment. So
you're calling Keyshawn Vaughn a bad RB2?
I'm calling him. I'm just saying based on his. When I say bad, he might be a good RB2, but it's a bad dynasty pick to go after a almost 24-year-old running back that looks like a one contract running back. He doesn't look like he's going to be an elite prospect. Listen, even good running backs like Leonard Fournette is going to have trouble getting a second contract.
Yeah, it's a crazy world, man. It's a crazy world for the RB market. That's for sure.
That's all I meant. Is that in a unique, foregoing the elite wide receiver prospects is not how I play dynasty, because it's a long game, as you know.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, moving on then. One of the elite wide receiver prospects went off the board right after that with Justin Jefferson. I love it. I mean, to me, it was a coin flip between a guy like Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson. But so I can't really argue that pick, but Justin Herbert fell to the 12 spot. Now, the same guy, our boy Eak, he had the 11 and the 12 pick. So who knows if he would have taken Justin Herbert above Justin Jefferson. Like, it's hard to say when you own both those picks, but I think that, in a vacuum, I probably would have gone Justin Herbert ahead of Justin Jefferson, just for the reasons you outlined with quarterback before. Just, like
Absolutely.
the length of the contract, the immediate impact to your fantasy team, the importance of a Superflex roster to have, a deep quarterbacks on your bench as much as possible. But
getting a quarterback that's drafted in the top 10 picks is, like I said before, and I don't want to be able to circle back. Yeah. I mean, exactly. That they're going to be the quarterback next year. Like, I know Justin Herbert is locked into the 2021. Like, I know that for a fact. And he's probably going to get a ton of starts this year too. But it's just, there's that's when draft capital really matters. I mean, sometimes we talk about draft capital and we're kind of double counting it. And, we could talk about that later, but I think top 10 quarterback, they're invested. Look how many chances your boy Mitchell Trubisky's gotten.
Mitchell Trubisky, Josh Allen, Daniel Jones. It's kind of crazy to think that, like right now, Josh Allen by far is probably, arrows pointing up for that guy over a guy like Baker Mayfield, which who would have thunk it, right? Who would have thunk it? But okay, moving on. 2.1. Finally, I got to make a pick with Jalen Reagor. We talked about it before. That I was high on Jalen Reagor in general.
It's looking good, man. It's looking good for him.
Yeah, we were chatting as the draft was falling, and I was like, okay, if Justin Herbert was there, it would have been really painful because it's kind of the unsexy pick. But I definitely would have chosen Herbert over Jalen Reagor, and
brain over heart
over Justin. Absolutely, that's what you have to do. So then Matt trades back into the 2.2, and he gets Denzel Mims, which I love that pick. I can't complain. Look, that's kind of where I would have had him. I would have had him just after Jalen Reagor. Were you as high on Denzel Mims as we were, as Matt and I were?
I basically the very macro headline I had on him was high upside, but probably the highest bust potential of the of the top 6 or 7 wide receivers. Like I said, I think he's got as much upside as CeeDee Lamb. He looks like he could be could do some of the things that Josh Gordon does. But when I watched the film, the tape on him, I just saw it looked like he was getting pushed around a little bit, and I just said, like, does this guy look like he translates? But yeah, I would have, I'm very comfortable taking him as high as pick 11 or 12, but I would have some expectation of bust, but I love the pick.
Yeah. Well, he was a polarizing asset. And look, the fantasy community, we all kind of follow each other in certain directions, right? I mean, after the Senior Bowl, the hype was real. And then he went out and he just destroyed the combine. And like, we pretty much all fell off our chairs saying, holy crap, this guy could be just, the second coming.
Yeah.
But a lot of NFL draft prospects, there was a reason he fell to the second round.
Well, that was the alarming part. That was the alarming part. We just had, like, he blew the combine up and then still fell. Like, that was, to me, because the draft capital is kind of has all that baked in. It has the tape baked in and it has the combine baked in. And then the draft capital is the result of that. So when he blew up the combine and then still fell, that was where I moved him down my ranking a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I quoted it. I tweeted it out during the start of the second round when he kept falling and falling, saying, "Okay, this reminds me a lot of DK Metcalf just the year prior, where he's put up pretty good numbers in college. He comes out and has an amazing combine, but yet there's still question marks in the NFL circles."
That was silly, though. That was silly. He can't run routes. Silly. Yeah, I'm saying the DK Metcalf thing that he can't run all the routes, so we're going to push him down the board was obvious to a guy like you, Shane. It was obvious to a guy like me, and we're big dummies, Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I don't hate it. The one pick I don't love was the next pick, 2.3. Again,
ironically, you don't.
Ironically, exactly. He crushed the first 4 picks, and then he goes and takes Jordan Love at the 2.3. I don't hate taking Jordan Love when we talked about the value of quarterback, but a guy like Jordan Love, I took Jalen Hurts a little bit later in this round, and to me, that's more of an upside type play. Jordan Love, he is only going to play if there's an injury, and even then, do we know for sure that the Packers would be comfortable putting him in the starting role? Say if Rodgers gets hurt in week 4 or something like that, I'm not entirely confident about that because he is he's a project. He's a project. Now, if you're cool just to stash him away, and we do have taxi spots on our team, so
not enough,
I know, but it's an option. But to me, it was a reach.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you want to get your guy, more power to you. I think he could have been available a little bit later on. I think that was the pick where he gave up Kenny Galladay to get in there too, right? I mean, he paid a massive toll to get up there. Or was
Kenny,
that the pick?
I think he already owned the 2.3. He paid Kenny Galladay to get Denzel Mims.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
you actually know because I own the 2-3, and that was
Oh, maybe
part.
you're right.
Yeah, so I
I
think
don't
that
know.
was
It's
the
all
Gall-
confusing now. At
Yeah, no,
some
I
point,
think
Hung had that pick.
yeah,
That's
right,
all I know.
and he got it from me because I used it to move up and to get Lamb. So yeah, I
Right,
think this
okay.
was the Galladay the price.
Okay,
Again,
maybe you're right.
and it just like you said, it's hard to predict injury, and it's if you look at contracts, I think that when you become a dynasty player, that you have to start looking at contracts a little bit deeper, and you didn't have to dig too deep. It's been on every single podcast, every single Twitter feed that Aaron Rodgers, that the Packers can't get out of the contract this year or next year without destroying their team. So that means you're waiting a minimum of year 3 to use Jordan Love. Now, again, it could pay off, but someone, you got to have a lot of dynasty patience to hope a prospect like that turns out and to wait 3 years for it. So if you're playing the long game, I totally respect it. It's not a move I'd make, but doesn't mean that I'm correct.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, the bottom line is in the next 2 years, there's so much that changes. Players look, Dynasty is deep, but yet there's still waivers that run every day. Well, we do with daily waivers or every week after games. There's always going to be players that emerge. A guy that I have on my team right now that I have to decide if I want to cut him or not is a guy like Greg Ward, where out of nowhere he comes up and he produces for 4 weeks in a row. So players like that arise, and then you have to make these tough decisions. Do I want to drop a guy like Jordan Love to pick up this new sexy waiver wire option? It's going to be tough, and to keep a player like that. Look, I'm more comfortable dropping a second or a third or fourth round rookie pick type prospect to pick up a weekly waiver wire option just to kind of get a little jolt and help win that week. When I'm getting rid of a round 2 type guy, it's a little bit more painful. But
yeah, same thing with the real NFL.
Yeah. Okay. So Henry Ruggs falls to 2.4 to my boy Jazz.
We love that.
Yeah,
we think
that's killer.
I have Ruggs as I would take him as high as pick 9 or 10. Not much to discuss there. So great value, great job.
Move on.
Good job by you, Jazz. Good job by you.
Yeah, good job, Jazz. Okay, Mike, I hope you're still watching this. Adam Troutman, 2.5.
Yeah, I mean,
let him have it, Al.
All right. I mean, love the player and I love the aggression. I don't want to look foolish, so I'm going to actually temper my abuse towards Mike, who reached up, and it was a reach because his ADP is a full round later. Yep. As you can see, another tight end didn't go until round 4. So I mean, hindsight of the draft is always is always 20/20, but this is where ADP is useful. So nothing wrong with reaching up to get your player, but when you look at ADP. Right. Again, so Mike's saying I need a tight end, and I respect it. And I don't know where exactly Mike's other picks were, but again, it's from a value perspective, it's not a great pick. Now, if this is your guy, you want to plant a flag for him, I totally respect the deal going up at 2.5 and getting Adam Troutman. But his ADP being in the 3rd round, it just feels a little reachy. But I don't want to look foolish in saying that. So, and I don't proclaim to know how Adam Troutman is going to translate to the pros. He's in a great situation. Would I have done it? No. Just like I said, in like, think about it, Shane, in redraft. Mm-hmm. And say we love, I'm trying to think of a good player going in the 5th round. Who's a good player right now going in round 5? Terry McLaurin, good example.
Sure.
You wouldn't reach into round 2, even though he probably should be a round 2 pick, Terry McLaurin, right? But you wouldn't reach into round 2 to take him. You might wait until the end of round 3 because he goes in round 5. But in that's the equivalent of reaching up a round and a half in a 5-round draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down to is it's fine. I like Adam Troutman. I got him in one of my other leagues, but at the end of the 3rd round, granted it wasn't a super flex, but still, end of the 3rd round, that's to me where you're taking a stab at some of these tight end prospects because, we don't know what's happening. But, actually similar in that league, I also have Jared Cook, and Mike just mentioned that he is Jared Cook in this league. So, he's kind of locking up that tight end situation in New Orleans. But you don't hate it. It's just it was early, Mike.
It's about who's early. Right, and it's about who. And again, I see like
who else,
Mike.
Yeah.
Who else is on the board at that time? Now, if there's no one else that you like, that's fine. Now, the biggest mistake, and again, listen, we've been playing Dynasty for I've been playing Dynasty for about 6.5, 7 years. So not a ton of time. And I'm still making a lot of mistakes. And the biggest mistake that I promised I wouldn't make this Dynasty season, that I made even up until last Dynasty season, was I'm going to take BPA, best player available, no matter what. So
don't draft on need.
Right. Now, if it's a tiebreaker, I'll draft on need, or if it's close, I'll draft on need.
Yeah.
But last year, in another league, I needed a running back, and I took Justice Hill, and early at like 2.2. I know he was going around there, but it was better players. And in this situation, Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk are all elite wide receiver prospects, which in our specific draft, Troutman went before. Now, again, doesn't mean that it won't pay off. It's just that when you're rolling the dice and you're playing the percentages, those three prospects for me in my evaluation are elite prospects, whereas Troutman is more of a he looks like a high upside but not an elite tight end prospect.
Well, and then you look at the next 4 players that went off the board. They were all wide receivers. It went Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, to your boy, Brandon Ayuk, and Bryan Edwards. I would have taken all 4 of those guys before I Troutman.
But you can make a case that Edwards is a full tier below. But I mean, think about Pittman and T. Higgins. You and I agree are elite prospects. And whether you like Brandon Ayuk or not, you have to respect the draft capital here, and that you have to respect that the NFL liked him and he went. I mean, the 49ers came out and said that he was their wide receiver 1 ahead of Lamb and Judy. So and who knows if they're telling the truth, but that said, that is how you start thinking about things as a dynasty player. And these are the same mistakes I made. And I don't want to call it a straight mistake, but thought process wise, playing the board, playing the percentages, that's how I would have done it.
Yeah, no, I don't hate it. So then, so we're going to move on. I mean, we're already on 36 minutes. So I'm going to finish out this round, and then we're going to just chat really high level. We'll just talk high level, some of the 3rd, 4th, 5th picks that you like the best. And we're going to close it out here. So, so I went Jalen Hurts as the next pick off the board. I like that. I mean, I was tempted to take it at we're at 2.7 where I took T. Higgins, but I could not pass up the value on T. Higgins when he fell there.
And your mindset was right. You talked to me offline. Your mindset was like, hey, this pick could literally turn into nothing, or it could be like Lamar Jackson-esque. And you know that it's more likely to be nothing than Lamar. But you know me, swing for the fence. You're going to hit a ball once in a while. Yeah,
absolutely. Speaking of swinging to the fences, Antonio Gibson, Zach Moss went off to you to close out the round. Antonio Gibson, man, that's a swing for the fences type play. And if he actually lives up to his potential, man, could Washington not be a disgusting team? If Dwayne Haskins comes through and actually is a hashtag good quarterback, could they not be good with Terry McLaurin, with our boy Antonio Gibson, with Darius Geis, to still have the old Grizzly veteran?
You're forgetting somebody.
All day.
They drafted in the 4th round.
Oh,
Antonio Gandy Golden.
That's right. So I mean, Washington's kind of turning it around, and obviously they went early, and they went defense early, which I love, and I don't know, it's going to be exciting. I like it. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly roll out some players here. Some of the picks that I liked. Anthony McFarland, I just think upside potential. James Conner, who knows, right? Same thing with AJ Dillon. AJ Dillon went after that. It's all about upside at that point. You want to get a piece of that Packers offense.
Yeah, that's a round of value right there. I'm saying that's a round. AJ Dillon has been going early 2nd. I think that's too early. I think where he went in our draft at 3.2 is like the ultimate spot. Now I feel good about AJ Dillon in the 3rd round.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the reality, right? If it was a non-super flex, you could, maybe Joe Burrow would be gone at this point. Maybe Tua would be gone at this point. Maybe Herbert, but probably not, right? So then Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, both those guys would not have gone in round 2, which would have pushed up some of these players into the mid to late 2nd rounds. But I like Laviska Shenault at 2.3 to Matt. For me, it was a tough decision between McFarland and Shenault. I ended up going on, I just want to get a piece of that Pittsburgh running back game. But Laviska Shenault, I like him. He's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. You could argue he's going to be boom bust potential, but I liked him as a prospect. So 3rd round, I love it.
3rd round, no problem. But you know me, I've expressed my thought on Shenault. I think right here, it's perfectly worth the upside, but he's an injury guy who it's been so far. Obviously sometimes they come to the NFL and those injuries magically go away. He's more of like a running back playing wide receiver. That said, he did have a handful of rushing touchdowns in college. So maybe there's your upside, but I don't like him as as translating to the NFL because he is more of a short and intermediate guy. But that said, that's what Gardner Minshew is. He's a short and intermediate thrower. So maybe it'll work out. I mean, I have said to you on many occasions, Chenault is not a player I'm targeting. I'm passing, but you can't argue the value here.
Yep. So then the last player in this tier, in my opinion, was probably Joshua Kelly. Joshua Kelly goes off the board again to Jazz at 3.4. I like it. I mean, you get a piece of that Chargers offense. We both are extremely high on Austin Eckler. We think he's going to be amazing this year. And we think at least I think he's probably a pretty solid dynasty asset as well, because I don't think that, is going to be a 1-year wonder. But Joshua Kelly, what do you think about that pick?
I like Joshua Kelly. This seems to be the place where all in the third round where all the backup running backs are going. I think that Joshua Kelly is not so much a threat to Austin Eckler. It was more of an indictment on the depth of the position. I think you need 3 of these guys. Everyone loves Justin Jackson. I didn't like him as much as everyone else did. I mean, it doesn't mean I was right. They were wrong. I didn't see him as like this dynamic back. Joshua Kelly looks awesome. So I think that's their backup running back once they get up and running. And Austin Eckler, I mean, you know how much I love him. I think he's a first-round redraft player. Certainly, so anywhere in the second round for Dynasty is good with me. He's insulated with his pass-catching ability, and he's not. You don't worry about another running back coming in and taking any fantasy value away from him. You know what Austin Eckler is. So I like Joshua Kelly.
Love it. Okay, we're going to move on real quick here. Chase Claypool went at 311. What do you think about that? I think that's good value, right?
Yeah, I have Claypool as my 23rd overall ranked player, so I have him as a second round player. Let's put aside that for a second, and I'll be quick. That Pittsburgh has had a rich history of drafting wide receivers. There's some talk that Juju Smith-Schuster won't re-sign with Pittsburgh. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But I think he's set up right away. Claypool, he's a big, huge, fast player. Everyone wants him to play tight end. He's not going to. I think he plays outside. Deontay Johnson plays outside, pushes Juju back in. I like Claypool as a player.
There you go. Okay, so we're going to end it there unless there's any particular picks you want to just quickly jump out. I mean, AGD went middle of the 4th round. I think that's good value there. It's, you're going for upside.
Yeah, and I also like him. I like Big Stick Nicks. I like Mike Yeager's pick of P. Ryan in the 3rd round. I know some people thought that he went a little bit earlier than some of these other pass-catching running backs, but P. Ryan is a good dynasty play. You get him at a good value, and there's Le'Veon Bell and Frank Gore likely won't be in a Jets uniform in 2021. So I think if Mike just holds on to him, he has a good starting running back in 21.
Well, shit, and then Mike went and took John Hightower at 4.9, which I like John Hightower. I mean, it's
in that round, who knows, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a high upside play. He's a fast player. I like it. And then at the late 5th round, there's guys like KJ Hill, Quintez Cephas, Thaddeus Moss, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like, that's kind of the 5th round. Yeah.
Let's end on one of your takes right here. So,
sure.
A player that I get a lot of questions about from like the hardcore dynasty community is people ask me about Van Jefferson all the time. So just, if you don't mind, talk about the Rams 2nd round pick, Van Jefferson. Does this throw cold water on Josh Reynolds, or is Van Jefferson a long play? He's a little bit older of a prospect. So I'm curious of your thoughts on him.
The thing about Van Jefferson is I feel like there's not a lot of upside, right? But at the same time, he's one of these players that he was productive. He was at the Senior Bowl, and there were some people like Bucky Brooks came out during the Senior Bowl and said that he was the best wide receiver on the week over Denzel Mims. And Bucky Brooks, I mean, to be honest with you, I tend to disagree with a lot of his takes, but he's a very smart guy in NFL circles. I mean, he's known as one of the best draft analysts. So the fact that the Rams would go out and spend a 2nd round pick on a player like Van Jefferson, to me, says there's definitely a possibility there.
Yeah.
The Rams went out and they got one of the Golden Sons. Why can't
you talking about in this draft?
No. To you, why
Cooper Kupp?
Cooper Kupp, thank you. I don't know why Cooper Kupp. I love Cooper Kupp. He's on my damn team. I love that guy.
Yeah.
So they clearly like their Senior Bowl type players. Like that's what this tells me, right?
Keep in mind though, Shane, that Cooper Kupp is likely not going to be able to be re-signed next year. So does that change your outlook on, because he's going to garner 13 to 15 million per if he has another season like last, and another team's probably going to sign him. So does that change your perception on Van Jefferson at all for 21?
Well, that's kind of where I'm going with. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, right? Lots can happen. If they feel like Cooper Kupp's their guy, then they'll pay him, right? I mean, if they're sticking with Jared Goff,
they can't pay him.
Yeah,
they're cap strapped, and if you think that Kupp is a $14 million receiver, then they can't do it. If you think he's a $7 million receiver, then they could sign him.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get $14 million. But who knows? Who knows? But look, okay, to your point though, a guy like Van Jefferson, they spend high draft capital on him. He's a PPR type player. He's kind of like what Cooper Kupp is, right? He's Mr. Reliable. He could become a guy like Jared Goff's favorite wide receiver. And look, the moon is the upside for a player like Van Jefferson. He was a pretty good prospect. He's got the draft capital. He's going to a coach who, for what you take about the coach speak, is a coach that people want to be associated with, right? You want to be a Sean McVay. You want to get a piece of that offense. And just like I think the wheels are up for Cam Akers, the wheels are going to be up for a guy like Van Jefferson. It might not be this year. It probably won't be this year. But if they don't sign Cooper Kupp, then absolutely Van Jefferson could be an absolute steal.
Yeah,
we're going to end it there, Al.
Yeah, I was just going to, the very last word I was going to say is
Sure.
that I think that if Cooper Kupp even has a remotely decent season, he had like 90 catches, like, ton of touchdowns, a ton of yards. I'm telling you, there's going to be a lot of teams that want to pay him on a 2-year deal. A lot of teams.
There you go. And he went in the middle of the third round in our draft to our boy, Baron von Cock.
Iron Cock. Not Baron von Cock.
Whatever. I mean,
there's a distinction. An iron cock and a non-iron
right.
cock.
The
is
iron
a huge
cock, you're right.
distinction.
Okay, point proven. All right, Al, how do the people find you?
At Alan Seslowsky on Twitter, AlanSeslowsky, Alan Fantasy Football on Instagram.
Love it. You're on Roster Watch. You're doing DFS Army. You're doing Flex Network.
And I was saying,
yes,
if someone's listening to
if
somebody's listening to this podcast now on Monday, May 18th, we're going to do a live podcast on the DFS Army. We're having a very special guest, Kevin O'Brien, who's the fantasy football engineer, former DLF writer. I mean, one of the most brilliant fantasy dynasty minds out there. So I'm looking forward to talking to him. If you missed the live cast on the DFS Army podcast feed, we'll have the replay on there. So look for that after the 18th if you missed the live broadcast.
Yeah, definitely check it out, guys. Okay, so you can follow us on Twitter at the Flex Network 1. If you like what you've been watching, please like and subscribe. It really helps support our podcast and our little endeavor. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify. Listen to wherever you like to listen to, and we appreciate the support. For Flex Matt, for Al, we are the Flex Network.
The Flex Network. This is the Flex Network. Flex on them. Flex on everybody. This right here is the Flex Network. Yeah.